good plan doesn't just make the numbers work. It actually has to make and support the life that person actually wants to live as they go forward.
Hello and welcome to this special episode of WPTV. My name is David Katai, Senior Editor at Wealth Professional. Every year, WP releases our 5-star Wealth Advisors list to highlight some of the best and brightest that the Canadian wealth management industry has to offer. Today, we're lucky to be joined by one of those luminaries, Evan Riddell, Wealth Advisor, Investment Advisor, Associate Portfolio Manager, and founder of Riddell Wealth Management of Richardson Wealth. Evan is a specialist in retirement planning for high net worth Canadians. He offers plans that go beyond simple decumulation formulas and go into questions of purpose and personal meaning, things that we want to explore today. Evan, welcome to WPTV.
Thanks, David. I really appreciate it. Honestly, it's a real honor, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Well, we are always glad to have you, and I look forward to your insights in all things. So let's start with a little overview of your practice. I mean, I gave the spiel, but talk to me about it in your own words. Who do you serve and how do you serve them?
Riddell Wealth Management is really built around one specific chapter of a person's financial life. It's the transition into retirement and through retirement. So we work with Canadians who have spent decades building meaningful wealth, typically well over $1 million. So they have this very large nest egg, and they're starting to ask deeper questions about what that next phase really looks like for them. And as you mentioned at the top there, it's not just the financial piece there, it's that personal side. Their time, their identity, their sense of purpose that comes from stepping back from a lifelong career. We really treat those questions as inseparable from the financial ones, because the way we think about it is a good plan doesn't just make the numbers work. It actually has to make and support the life that person actually wants to live as they go forward.
So given your specialization, not just in retirement, but in this key transition moment, I'm curious as to what you think the rest of the industry maybe misses. What do you think other advisors tend to overlook when it comes to retirement plans for Canadians, and specifically to that incredibly sensitive transition moment?
The number is really the one that comes to mind. Like, retirement planning tends to focus heavily on a number, a target, a portfolio size, some type of projection. And certainly that's important, but that number is not a plan, it's just a threshold. So I find that many Canadians, they may arrive with retirement financially prepared, but they're emotionally unprepared for that next transition. And they may have the resources, but they don't have the framework to what really comes next. And I find that advisors who do, just do the math, they're really only doing half the job when it comes to those pieces there.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes a lot of sense. So let's contrast that with what you do. How do you approach these retirement plans?
Yeah, I think of it as building a system, not solving for a number. A good retirement plan has to be resilient. It needs to hold up across, decades of market cycles, tax changes, health changes, life changes that we really simply cannot anticipate for an individual. So we build scenario-based plans that, let me stress test each of the assumptions. We look at the sequence of withdrawals, the tax implications of each income source, the estate picture, and spending flexibility across different phases of retirement as it changes for the individual. For us, our goal really is to integrate a client's investments, their income, their taxes, their estate, all into one coordinated system, so they can really have confidence to continue to go forward and spend into the next years of their lives there. But on that side of things, what equally important is that personal side of the planning. Understanding what a client actually wants their life to look like and making sure it has meaning is really making sure that financial plan builds around that vision. And that's where we feel that the clarity and resilience of the planning really comes from, is that making sure that vision is reflective of what they want.
There's a question that occurs to me now, which is, and it's something I've heard from other advisors in talking about retirement, that frankly, many clients want to retire. They have a vision of retirement, but that vision of retirement is 2 Muskoka chairs on a dock. And it's not necessarily reckoning with the day-to-day. So I guess, how often is it that clients you find don't know what they really want in retirement, and how do you help them find what they want?
Yeah, that's a good question. It really comes down to going past the typical questions people ask. I find that most questions are around, okay, what's your balance sheet, your assets or liabilities? What do you make now? What do you spend now? Okay, can the projection support that going forward? And it doesn't dive at that deeper question there. So that can sometimes provide clarity on what a client could say. You can sustain a certain amount of income, but we don't know what that retirement really looks like in those pieces there. So I like to really try to find questions that really get at the root of what's important to them and what can really drive what they're looking for as we go forward.
You talk about making these plans for retirees, and it can all look fantastic on paper. You've looked through every detail. The clients are the ones who have to live it. Who are the types of clients who you found have been the most successful in retirement? Not just in terms of the amount of money they spend or save or accumulate, but who seem the most fulfilled. What are the kind of common denominators among those clients?
Without a doubt, it's the people who have purpose and they've thought deliberately about what the next phase looks like and a means of purpose when it comes to those pieces there. The most successful individuals in retirement aren't necessarily the wealthiest ones. It's the ones that have structure to their day. They have a meaningful connections, meaningful relationships, and have a reason and a purpose for what the next day looks like coming forward on those pieces there. And really having that framework gives them they're able to confidently then move into that space and really enjoy the day-to-day and the life that they've been spending years and years building towards. And on the flip side of that, the people we find that struggle the most in retirement are individuals a lot of times where their identity around their careers and themselves are so intertwined, and they've done such a great job and they're successful, but they haven't built an identity beyond that piece there. So when that finally gets there and they finally say, okay, I'm retired, a vacuum kind of opens up and the wealth really doesn't fill that void.
No, it's a really interesting point, and you're reminding me of this anecdote that I've spoken with about some other planners who will walk their clients through an exercise where they say, okay, map out 2 weeks of your retirement life and what your schedule looks like without taking a vacation. And what are you filling your days with? I mean, do you, you talk about some of the questions you asked. Will you engage in like that detail level of planning of like, let's talk about what a day-to-day is in your retired life?
Yeah, and that's a really good question on that side of things. It's definitely an important question to have. And most clients, if you ask them, what is it actually going to look like? When you say, what does retirement look like to you? They focus on the big pieces, the big travel, the big vacations they're going to do with their family, golfing, sailing, whatever the pieces are that they really want to do on that side of things there. But it's really that random Tuesday when there's nothing on the schedule that we really want to get at that and saying, okay, how does that day feel? What does that look like? And how are you going to fill your time with those random Tuesdays kind of going through those pieces there? So
Yeah.
when we think about that side of things, we do try to have those questions, and it's one where we have the question there, but it's an ongoing conversation. So as I said, it's important to have these pieces as you lead into retirement, but a reality of once you retire, you need to be retired every day going forward. So it's an ongoing process. It's a new phase of life where we're figuring out what that next piece looks like. And it's really important to continue having those conversations. And one we typically try to come back to our clients, even if they seem blissfully happy after years and years of being retired, we still come back to them kind of checking in on, okay, what's fulfilling to them? What are they enjoying most? Are they living the life they really want? And if not, what are those other options? Because again, money buys options, but it's the purpose that really gives those options you're meeting.
A lot of our conversation already today has talked about questions. And I want to ask you, just to lay it out explicitly, and you've mentioned a few questions you already asked, but what are some of the questions you think advisors can ask in general that are the most thought-provoking and will really reflect or cause clients to reflect on what their retirement would look like?
Yeah, I love questions with clients and all the rest as well. So one that I love to use especially in the beginning of a relationship with a client is, what is your relationship with money? A simple question, but it often reveals, and as you go deeper into it, it reveals a lot of experiences and beliefs that shape how that person approaches financial decisions. The things they've learned through their life and all the rest as well. It really will help guide the planning relationship, and working together going forward on that side. And another one I find that's really great is, who are you when you're not working? That usually opens up a real conversation about what someone's actually retiring to and not what they're retiring from. And I find that ultimately getting underneath what the numbers and understanding what really drives someone, what they value, what generally makes them happy is the most invaluable thing in that long-term planning relationship.
That's a tough question to answer. And honestly, Evan, you're throwing me for a little bit of a leap to start reflecting on that. So I can see how that would be pretty impactful with clients. You mentioned before how, you're going to be retired for every day after your retirement. Oftentimes we've found, and more recently, that that's not always the case, that there's this growing movement of people who will work longer or who will continue to work in some capacity. Maybe, you were a lawyer and now you're working at your local marina or something like that, but you're engaging with work or volunteer work as a way to add that purpose to retirement. How do you maybe introduce that idea to clients who have maybe a bit more of an old school binary idea of retirement, but who could actually benefit from the introduction of the purpose that comes with work?
Yeah, and it is definitely a conversation we tread lightly on, because when we have a planning piece there, we never want to have, you know, work after the retirement. We don't have that as a requirement or a recommendation. It's really more of a conversation around engagement and purpose. So usually what we want to make sure is we find the people who are the happiest are the ones and that are thriving in retirement are the ones that, they're volunteering, they're consulting, they're doing board work, they're simply staying connected to things that they still care about. And so rather than presenting it as a recommendation, I like to approach it as a broader conversation around their purpose, their fulfillment, the structure of their day. And then if someone feels energized and they love teaching or mentoring, contributing in some way, the financial plan should create flexibility to support that. And it's not just the financial side, it's the conversation around that. So we don't unintentionally remove it from those individuals' lives.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And again, I appreciate the sensitivity that is required in those conversations, because it could be something that someone really has a negative reaction to. Widening this out a little bit, you're a retirement specialist and again, a retirement transition specialist. What can the industry as a whole do to better support people who are transitioning into retirement and who are going through the intense financial and psychological experience of shifting from work to what comes after?
Yeah, I feel the industry really needs to expand beyond just the investments and embrace that true coordinated planning. We're really good in the industry of accumulation. You save, you invest, it grows, you repeat it over and over and over again and keep going forward. But the spending years, that like decumulation year period, is definitely underserved and leaves a lot of opportunities missed for people to really use their wealth in a meaningful way that really helps them. A lot of individuals we find will been saving and saving, and they're diligent savers and they're doing all the things that the industry tells them to do. But they get into retirement, the hardest thing for them is spending that money. They're no longer working. They have fear about, oh my gosh, I'm going to run out of money at some point. But they may have millions of dollars built up, but they're spending, a bare percentage of that piece there. And we show them regularly that, that wealth is just going to continue to outgrow for them. And that's great if they have a legacy piece they want to have there. But we also need to have a really deep conversation around, what can this do for you? Money is a means. It's something we can use to make impact in our own lives or the people around us, and making sure that that is aligning with what is fulfilling to us in those pieces there. So again, that beyond just that, like what we can do in that side of things there, I really think going past the decumulation years, it's that personal side as well as that emotional side, in which honestly it's largely ignored. The issues that come up after retirement, that loss of identity, the potential depression or life events that can continue happening with that, people who kind of struggle in those first number of years. I really think there's a huge opportunity for the industry to really help and be there to support individuals, have those deeper conversations that really go beyond the numbers and really go to, what does a good life actually look like? And how do you want to use the resources that you have available to you to build that?
Again, these are really valuable questions. And again, questions keep coming up in our conversation of just like how to provoke thought. I guess the final question from me is, what do you hope other advisors who are watching this take from your approach? What do you hope they start to integrate into their practices, even if they aren't the kind of retirement transition specialists that you are?
I think the biggest piece would be the plan matters more than the market. Again, the industry is so focused on the market, and all the rest of us do, and the market's going to do what it does. We have no way to control those pieces there. And in my mind, our value isn't predicting it. It's helping clients make clear, well-structured decisions in spite of it. And I hope more advisors really move towards a more truly integrated planning. Instead of having these siloed approaches of we'll do investments over here and insurance over here and estate pieces over here, really bringing those together while also creating space for that important conversation with the individual, with the clients, to really talk around what does a good life actually look like for that person. For me, if a client feels truly prepared financially and personally, that's the outcome that matters. Like that is the work.
That is an excellent point to end on, Evan. All I can really say is thank you so much for sharing these insights today and engaging on this really fascinating topic.
David, again, I really appreciate the conversation. And I'm looking forward to future ones that we can have.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And thank you to all of our viewers for WPTV. I've been David Kitai. Have a great rest of your day.